Please welcome the United States Secretary of the Treasury, the Honorable Jacob Lew.
Good afternoon. I want to thank Secretary Pritzker and Mayor Bloomberg for inviting me to join all of you here today. I recall very well the first U.S. Africa Business Forum 2 years ago and the ambition put forward to engage the private sector in support of Africa's growth. While Africa and the world have faced many challenges over the last 2 years, private sector investment and partnership continue to be a bright spot, increasingly driving growth on the continent and around the world. So thank you to our panelists and everyone here today for all that you're bringing to this critically important work. Earlier discussions have touched on the importance of trade, investment, regional integration, and economic diversification. In this session, we want to discuss some of the investments necessary to maintain and support private sector-led growth so that Africa can fully reach its potential in the 21st century. Africa's future economic success is important to the Obama administration. And to that end, I'm fortunate to have made 4 trips to the continent over the course of the President's tenure, including 2 as Treasury Secretary. And while continued government investment is of course important, the private sector is stepping in as well. Across the world, economic stability is a consistent requirement for the support of strong economic growth. Africa has made tremendous progress in this regard. Though there have been setbacks in some countries, as there have been in many parts of the world, nonetheless, the continent is in a stronger economic position now than it was 20 years ago, as it continues to develop a growing modern workforce with the skills and training necessary to move the economy forward. In fact, some countries in Africa were able to weather the turmoil of the global financial crisis better than others because of the steps taken to implement strong fiscal policies to reduce debt levels and to establish the foundation for sustained growth. The next steps will be no less challenging. To build on that foundation and secure a future of long-term sustainable growth, African countries must continue to make progress on improving the environment for private investment. It will mean streamlining processes, clarifying regulations, and reducing corruption. Longer-term growth, regional integration, and well-designed infrastructure investment are at the top of the list of hurdles. Both are consistently cited in Millennium Challenge Corporation analysis of growth challenges on the continent, including in Ghana, Cote d'Ivoire, Liberia, Senegal, and Mozambique. The region has a huge backlog and underinvestment in transportation, energy, communications, and public services. African economies are also confronting a dramatic shift in the makeup of their communities. The continent not only faces a growing population, but also one that is more urban. In fact, half of all Africans are projected to live in cities by 2030. Moreover, 10 to 12 million Africans are entering the workforce every year. A large working-age population in growing urban centers can pay large dividends, but only if these economies can create jobs and provide services for these new workers and their families. Systems of support built for another economy can easily be overwhelmed. Without critical investments in these communities, the migrant crisis we are seeing today could be but a hint of even bigger challenges to come. Given the vast needs and the limited public resources available, African leaders will need to plan carefully and prioritize those investments that will yield the highest returns. That will mean electricity generation that is cost-effective and climate-friendly, to power Africa's businesses and light its houses. Through Power Africa, the United States is committed to working with private partners, bilateral counterparts, and the World Bank and African Development Bank to increase electricity generation and deepen access across the continent. In fact, during my most recent trip to South Africa in my current role, I was pleased to meet with members of the Power Africa team, as well as some of our critical U.S. and African corporate partners. They are helping to realize a shared vision of an electric Africa, and it was an opportunity for me to hear about the progress that they've made and the work that still lies ahead. Investments are also needed in transportation to link African countries together and to better and more efficiently give access to global markets. This also includes construction of feeder roads to help bring Africa's food to tables across the continent while limiting spoilage and supporting livelihoods outside of urban areas. Through important programs like Feed the Future and its multilateral component, the Global Agriculture and Food Security Program, the United States is working to connect small farms to larger markets, creating new value chains and often in partnership with the private sector. In the 21st century, infrastructure includes communications and connectivity that allows businesses to operate in real time and allows households and schools to reach beyond their local areas. And it allows governments to deliver their public services more efficiently. Communications technology is a sector in which many African countries have truly moved forward. Mobile technology is ubiquitous and increasingly applied across a range of sectors, from personal banking to providing market information for small farmers. We must not forget the human side of investment. When we last met in 2014, the ravages of Ebola were spreading at a rapid pace. In addition to the tragic human costs, this outbreak led to border shutdowns and disruptions in trade and travel that affected businesses and economies across the continent. There is no starker reminder that investments in healthcare systems and preparedness are also vital to business prosperity, economic growth, and ensuring that the next generation of workers is healthy and productive. A healthy population is critical to a healthy economy. The United States is the world's largest donor to global health, from supporting efforts to reduce maternal mortality and improve child nutrition to combating pandemic disease. We work hand in hand with African governments and people to provide a healthy future for all Africans. We continue to prioritize tackling the scourge of HIV and AIDS through the President's Emergency Plan for AIDS Relief, which is saving millions of lives in Africa through treatment, prevention, and care. And while I was at the State Department, I was proud to have played a role in advancing global health, having led a team tasked with building a sustainable healthcare system wherever we could. And today, Treasury is actively working with the rest of the U.S. government on this important mission, using our analytic and assistance tools to improve the efficiency and financial sustainability of the counter-HIV efforts, and in partnership with the development banks, seeking multilateral efforts to further disease prevention and eradication. The global community collectively embraced the Sustainable Development Goals as the benchmark we're all striving for. The third International Conference on Financing for Development, held in Addis Ababa in July of last year, galvanized countries around the financing and policies needed to make progress on the path towards sustainable development. In Addis, we confirmed the importance of three streams of finance: official development assistance, domestic resources, and private investment. All three streams are critical, and official development assistance in particular has a role in helping countries to build the capacity and investment climates to catalyze the other two. And no region of the world was more vocal than Africa about the urgent need to improve domestic resource mobilization, coupled with smart public expenditure for the benefit of its citizens. The World Bank and other development banks have taken on the challenge of Addis. They're making reforms to how they work in order to stretch their balance sheets so they can do more with their existing resources to meet the demand of countries throughout the continent. They're also redoubling efforts to help strengthen governance and institutions to provide the rules-based, transparent, and predictable environment that private investors seek. Through the use of innovative financing mechanisms and structures like the World Bank's Global Infrastructure Facility, the development banks are also helping to reduce risk and crowd in the private sector to help finance large and complex infrastructure projects. Finally, the development banks are also providing critical finance for regional public goods in Africa, such as those related to climate, refugees, health security, and regional market development. Before turning to our distinguished panel, I want to thank you again for the opportunity to participate again in this event. The leaders of Africa today face the difficult challenge of boosting economic opportunities for this and the next generation. But you do not meet this challenge alone. The private sector leaders here are a strong indication of the support that you have and the opportunity that we all see in Africa. I also want to be clear that the United States stands with you. Together with my colleagues, we will continue to work in partnership with you to make African prosperity a reality for future generations. Thank you very much.